with the Treasury so that they will accept these ideas or give us a good reason why they ought to be rejected. And hopefully we can do that in the next 2 or 3 days.
Now, Senator Kyl, let me ask you about a couple of ideas that certainly the Democrats have proposed on paper, and some of your colleagues and you on the Sunday talk shows yesterday also indicated an interest. One is some kind of layer of oversight over Treasury as they manage this. That's so-called accountability. And also some kind of perhaps an ownership stake in the companies that agree to or that ask to be bailed out here. Are Republicans on board for those two things?
Well, let me take the second one first, and I don't want to get down too much into the weeds, but my understanding from Treasury is that they want to do this, first of all, to take the easiest assets to buy. And those are assets that you simply buy. It's commercial paper that you would buy on the market. There's no point in taking an ownership stake in any company when you do that. But they may eventually get to the point where there are some other troubled institutions that have some assets on the books that the United States could profitably take over. And in those situations, because of the nature of the institution, they may need to strike a separate bargain with them, something like the bailout of an AIG or one of the other companies that we've bailed out, in which case, of course, you would want to have an equity position in order to protect the taxpayer. The other thing I think is critical here is protecting the taxpayer is number one. And several of the ideas that I conveyed today were designed to try to build in the protection of the taxpayer. The more we do that, the less oversight from somebody on the outside we're going to need. There will be congressional oversight of this. But rather than, at least personally, me worrying about some kind of oversight board, I'd like to start, and I'm sure Chris agrees with this, to make sure that the language in the legislation authorizing the Secretary to act provides pretty specific guidelines as to how he's supposed to approach setting the price for these assets and how he's going to go about acquiring them so that we have the best chance possible to make sure that at the end of the day the taxpayers will get their money back.
Senator Dodd, in our limited time, let me ask you about two of the real biggies that many Democrats and many Republicans have talked about. One is some limit on executive compensation of the countries that get bailed out, and the other is to help homeowners who are at risk of foreclosure, in addition to helping the banks who are at risk of having their assets that they can't sell. So are you near agreement with the administration on either of those? Barney Frank said today that in fact they did seem amenable to helping the homeowners at risk of foreclosure.
Well, I hope so, because again, again, Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and Hank Paulson have said repeatedly over the last number of weeks that, of course, the cause of this problem, a preventable problem in some ways, had there been a more aggressive action on the foreclosure problem earlier on, is still at the heart of this. These mortgage-backed securities, the bulk of which are residential mortgages that are not worth much.
But my question is, do you think you're close to some agreement, at least in concept, that that should be part of this bill?
Well, I believe it should, and I think there are a number of people who agree with that. Otherwise, we're back at this problem again until you deal with the cause of it. Dealing with executive compensation is thornier for some. It's probably more of an optics issue than dealing with the issue itself. But again, if you're investing $700 billion of taxpayer money, what the public would be irate over is if in some of these companies where we're buying this junk and getting it off their books, that they turn around and end up having contracts that reward them with multi-million-dollar compensation packages. I can't begin to describe to you the anger we would receive from people if we didn't try to address that as well.
Senator Kyl, I know you said there's no real agreement here, but let me just ask you, is there an emerging consensus among Senate Republicans on either of those two issues, whether something should be added to help homeowners here at risk, that is, renegotiate their mortgages, and two, some way to limit executive compensation or what is considered excessive compensation if these companies turn for help?
I'm sorry. Yes, I think the answer to both questions is yes. I understand that there have been a lot of proposals conveyed to Treasury, and they're trying to figure out what to do on the executive compensation and have some ideas on that. And that with respect to the language on foreclosures, I've actually seen language which looks to me pretty good, because what it does is to use this new process to actually make a law that was just passed and became effective on July 30th to actually have a better chance of working. It sets up $300 billion worth of mortgages to be reworked, and what this language would do is to encourage the Secretary to find those loans that are in that category that could be reworked as part of the loans that are acquired under this new program.
Quick final word. Senator Dodd, Senator Kyl, does this have to be done this week?
Well, it should be done soon. And again, I think speed is important, but I want to emphasize to you, getting it right, we're going to live with this for decades to come now, so we better do it right as well.
Do you think it has to be done this week, Senator Kyl?
I do. I agree with Chris. It's got to be done right. But this is one of those things where there is an emergency, and the kind of time that we would ordinarily put into one of these things is not available to us now. So I think by the end of the week or early part of next week, we'd better have it done, or the market is going to react in a pretty negative way.
Senator Kyl, Senator Dodd, thank you both.
Thanks.
You're welcome.